You wake up from another restless night and you don't quite feel right. You then decide to visit your doctor so they can run some tests to locate any potential problems. After the tests are conducted, the doctor enters your hospital room to tell you the results. The doctor leans in towards you and in a low, sensitive voice says that he is very sorry because you only have 6 months to live. How would this news change the way that you live your life? If you would change nothing in your life, then you could be living life correctly. But if you would change the way you live, then you may not even be truly living at all. After hearing you have mere months to live, perhaps you take some of the fleeting time you have left to try and mend a broken relationship before it's too late. You may even think about what you could have achieved if you weren't going to die. You then start to think of your goals, dreams, aspirations, and even relationships that will all evaporate in a few short months, which will pass like seconds on a clock. It seems fair to say that everyone will likely die by someone or something. It's just a matter of time, and your time, my dear friend, could be closer than you think. Those of us who are older and closer to death feel the cold shadow of death that hangs over us. We see our bodies deteriorating, our health declining, and our minds slowly slipping away. The older generation is constantly reminded of our mortality, and that death is inching closer every moment. This could also explain why religious institutions are filled with those who are advanced in age, because they know that their time is almost up. These people think to themselves, if there is a God, then I should learn more about him before we potentially meet. On the other hand, the younger generation is all too obsessed with life to think about their mortality because they are too busy trying to live their lives. However, even the younger generation is violently reminded of how short life can be when the life of someone they know is suddenly ripped from them unexpectedly. Everyone, old or young, is no more than one accident away from eternity. Even now, you are closer to death than when you started this video because time is working against you. This then begs the question, as we all approach death, what should we be doing in the meantime? After all, we will be dead far longer than we are alive, so we should start to think about how we could potentially spend eternity, which should dictate how we live our lives while we are still alive. We are essentially faced with 3 main options. The first option is to adopt the atheistic worldview, which predicts that there is no objective purpose to life and that there is no life after death. This hopeless, purposeless, and nihilistic view can lead people to do nothing because nothing ultimately matters anyway. Or someone else who lives according to this view may live for selfish gratification for the remainder of their 6 months of life. The second option we have would be a merit-based worldview, where there may or may not be a meaning to life. But if you just do good things, you could get reincarnated or go to paradise where at minimum you will get to live again in some way or another. This is a more hopeful view, but who knows if it's true, because we cannot know scientifically if there truly is life after death. However, if we remain logically consistent, we also cannot scientifically prove that there is nothing after death, like the atheist believes. Lastly, we have option 3, which is the biblical worldview, where there is an objective purpose to life and life after death. According to this view, you are either with God or separated from God for eternity, which seems just as scary as it is comforting. First, let us inspect the atheistic worldview, which predicts when someone dies, it would be as if they are in a dreamless sleep. Or, if you have ever had surgery and you experienced general anesthesia, that would be akin to the dreamless sleep state a deceased person could be in. But what does the atheistic worldview say about the purpose of life? If it all ends up the same, and we all die, no matter how great, wealthy, or powerful we become, life seems futile and meaningless, because after all, we all end up dead, cursed to be in a dreamless state of nothingness for eternity. But this logic also flows the opposite way as well. If everything turns out the same, why shouldn't I play the most beautiful game of life that I can muster? Why not strive after my goals every second of every day? Why shouldn't I work out, eat healthy, try to live a long, healthy life? Or rather, perhaps I should live a fun, short life. What does it ultimately matter if I am a good or bad person? Because everything is objectively meaningless, and we all end up dead. So why shouldn't I just try to enjoy life as much as possible, at the expense of others, as long as I can get away with it, or if it benefits me? Ultimately, there is no right or wrong way to live life on an atheistic worldview, because there is no purpose to life. So why not eat and be merry before you die? Or don't, because after all, it doesn't matter anyway. This then brings us to our second option, which is a worldview that is based upon your actions and your own efforts. In this view, we could have an objective purpose to life, such as to be as good as possible, to either appease some gods or rank higher in a karmic system, to where our good deeds would gain us a better reincarnation or a better version of paradise. This view seems to have something going for it, because if this view is true, I would want to be as good as possible so I could be reborn as something with a better life. But even if this view is wrong, and I lived a good life for no reason, I would not care, because if I was dead and atheism was true, I no longer exist at all, so my life was ultimately meaningless. So between these two options, I can either believe in atheism, to where if it is true, I ultimately have no significance in the world, and if a works-based worldview is true, I will either end up reborn as a higher being, or I could be good enough to enter into paradise. Although this comparison contrasts the benefits of both worldviews, if they were true, if atheism is false and the merit-based worldview is true, yet I lived as an atheist, then I have potentially forfeited my chances of being reborn as a higher being, and I have forfeited my odds of getting into paradise, which is a place of happiness and bliss. Clearly, it seems that your odds are better off living according to the works-based worldview than an atheistic worldview when we compare their best-case scenarios and their worst-case scenarios. With that said, we do have a third option. In the Christian or biblical worldview, the purpose of life is to know God and make Him known, which glorifies Him. In this option, people are saved by grace, which leads to Christians doing great works. Although Christianity is not merit or works-based, Jesus tells his followers to love one another, and that if you have faith, then good works will follow. Like we said, Christianity is not works-based, so moral living and doing good deeds will not be enough to get you into heaven. But by simply believing in your heart in Jesus Christ, by understanding that He is God, that He died for your sins, and that He rose to live again after His death, you will be saved. Now we have a total of 3 options, where if atheism is right, you enter a dreamless sleep state after you die. If a works-based worldview is correct, and you perform well enough, you will either get reincarnated or enter into paradise when you kick the bucket. Or if the biblical worldview is valid and you believe in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, you will be with God forever in the new heavens and the new earth. However, if you picked atheism as your option and you are wrong, well then you forfeit either being reborn or getting into heaven. If the works-based worldview is wrong, you will either be in a dreamless sleep or hell, which is a place of torment for all eternity. Lastly, if you picked option 3 and Christianity is wrong, either you will be in a peaceful eternal sleep-like state, or you will be reincarnated as a better being. It seems that Christianity overall is the best option, because even if it is wrong, you have a better chance of coming out with a positive outcome than if you were to pick either of the other options. This shows the amazing practical upside of Christianity, even if it's not true. If Christianity is wrong, and if the merit-based worldviews are wrong, then it doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter, you may ask? Because if there is no God, then nothing ultimately matters. And we are just atoms bumping into other atoms on a speck of dust we call Earth, which is flying through space until eventually all life in the cosmos dies out and the entire universe goes to heat death. Nonetheless, even if Christianity is not true, it is far more pragmatic than the atheistic view, because at least we left those who are still alive far better off than what they were before, because we decided to live by biblical principles, which commands Christians to show love to all people. Christians are taught to put others first and not to think about ourselves. But flawed people cannot live by these teachings perfectly, which is why the worldview is grace-based, because we need plenty of grace from others and from God. The Christian way of thinking also makes society better off because no other institution has built more hospitals, orphanages, or universities than Christians. Christians are good citizens, and they provide a place of community for the lost, friendless, and the unpopular. Christians have also won more Nobel Prizes in general and specifically in the sciences than any other group on the planet. Having said that, those would be the benefits if Christianity was untrue. But if Christianity is true, then it is the most important truth that has ever existed. If Christianity is not true, a Christian really does not lose much, because without God, nothing truly matters anyway. But if Christianity is true, then even our losses on earth will be our gain in heaven. Imagine being redeemed from every wrong you have ever committed, to be forgiven from all your sins, to be a child of God, and to be with Him in eternal happiness is just scratching the surface of the benefits for Christianity. Lastly, if you follow the biblical worldview, not only do you live a fruitful life, but you will also have achieved the meaning and purpose behind life. And even if you were wrong, you would fulfill the requirements to be reincarnated or get into paradise, which is a very high likelihood because most religions are in fact works-based, and Christians have great works. You see, Christians would still get into the paradises of most other religions because Christians are supposed to put others' needs before their own. And they do this by showing love, even when it does not benefit themselves more than it hurts them. Overall, Christianity is either more pragmatic than other worldviews, even if it's untrue, or if it is true, then it leads to true salvation, love, acceptance, meaning, purpose, and an objective reason to keep living life. Therefore, it would be best to live as if Christianity is true. But don't believe based on game theory or blind faith, because there is plenty of strong philosophical, archaeological, historical, and scientific evidence that gives credence to the truth of Christianity. One of the best ways to know something is to ask someone who has experience in it. So how do we know if there is life after death? I would suggest asking someone who died, and I'm not simply talking about medical death, where their heart stops or brain activity temporarily ceases, but rather someone who fully died. Using this criteria, the best person to research would be Jesus of Nazareth, because he has the most evidence pertaining to not only his death, but also his subsequent resurrection. According to non-biblical sources and biblical sources, Jesus is one of the most moral, truthful, and well-respected people to ever live, who died and came back to life. Believing in God and the afterlife is not merely wishful thinking, but rather an educated, evidence-based prediction. Some will say that belief in God is more for one's own comfort, but I would say that belief has nothing to do with the truth value of the proposition that God exists, considering that your belief whether he does or doesn't exist doesn't mean he's objectively real or not. Also, the comfort objection swings both ways, because I could say that those who disbelieve in God find comfort in thinking that they will never have to meet him to be judged for their wrongdoings. To me it seems that people are not afraid of death, but rather the process of dying. Whether or not death is dreamless sleep, a doorway to reincarnation, or eternal existence in another form, death is not to be feared, especially for a Christian. Remember the urgency of which I am telling you this. Death, regardless about what you believe, is encroaching on you right now, because you, my dear friend, are dying. This is your wake-up call, so wake up. This is your call to do more, be more, and this is your call to find the truth. I've seen it too often when someone will get news that they have terminal cancer, or a sudden stroke happened, a heart attack, a lethal infection, or a sudden accident takes someone painfully and unexpectedly. Some people have years or months to live, while others drop dead right then and there. We truly do not know how much time we have left. It would be safe to say that right now you are not living up to your potential, and that would be a shame because you could become so much more than you are right now. You have already come so far, and I know that you can do even better. When we think we have time left, we tend to value things that are replaceable or material, such as money, cars, jewelry, prestige, and other things, even though we neglect the more important things like health, relationships, and belief systems which could dictate where you will spend eternity once you have passed away. Death is creeping closer every second of every minute of every hour of every day. If that thought does not move you to action, then you will waste your life. You will not be remembered, and you will be lost forever. Wake up. Do something with your life. Be productive. Search for truth. Make a difference. Help people. Make mistakes, and then learn from them. Go to the gym, make money, create relationships, stop being comfortable and start to get out of your comfort zone. Educate yourself on a productive skill, get right with God, and above all else, find out the truth. If there is no ultimate purpose to the universe, then everything is ultimately meaningless, so why not play the best game of life that you can? Because if it all ends up the same, whether you are great or faulty, at least you will have fewer regrets on your deathbed knowing that you gave life your all. Remember, you are all in because you are not making it out of this game alive. Go now, live up to your full potential and seek out the truth. But remember, if God is real, and there is an afterlife or some sort of reincarnation, then be very afraid, because you will end up paying for your actions eternally. So don't squander the time you have left. Act right now, and do not waste your life, because we genuinely do not know the time we have left. We only know our time is running out.